Good morning, everybody. It's Friday. Hope everybody is well. I'm going to give you, most of you are still working on your um, bones, mystery of the bones activity, and that is fine. I'm going to just show you where we're going to be from when you're finished. So we're going to watch the video first, and then I'll give you time to finish up anything you need to finish up. It is Friday, so everything is due today. All right, so for those of you, so just give me your attention on this unit in Canvas. This is like the last part of the anthropology unit, which means we're going to wrap it up and talk about testing next week. Actually, let's see, where are we? Yeah, we'll test this next week. I'm looking at 9-week exams. We do have a 9-week exam, and that for you all, second is going to be September 30th. So that's something to think about. But we will have an end of unit test next week for anthropology. So keep that in mind. Keep those thoughts in mind. All right. So the last thing we want to talk about is types of trauma. So take a look at that. I'm going to leave this open. So when you finish your project today, come back to this and take a look at it. So these are words that she's going to use in the video, perimortem, antemortem, postmortem, and they simply mean before death, during death, after death, or just at the time of death. The mortem meaning death. So when you find a skeleton, you can tell whether certain traumas occurred before they died and they started healing. Were they injured in the process of becoming dead, or is it something that occurred after the person was already dead? Okay, so they can tell those differences. So we're going to watch a short video on that. I think, let's see, we still have a lot of people out, but they are late. So we're going to go ahead and get started and watch this, and then I'll give you a chance to finish up whatever you need to finish up today.
Hello everyone and welcome to today's session. In today's session we will be exploring trauma. So trauma is any kind of damage or injury that has happened to the skeleton, and this could be antemortem, perimortem or postmortem. So antemortem trauma is trauma that has occurred when this person was alive. So there will be signs of healing around the trauma site, and this could either be partial healing or complete healing depending on when the trauma actually occurred in this individual's life. So there may be calluses which cover the broken ends of bones, and the edges of the trauma site are now more smooth and rounded rather than rough and jagged. Perimortem trauma is trauma that has occurred around or at the time of death. So this could be what caused this individual's death, however it may not always be. So this trauma site will have no signs of healing, and there are no colour differences between the trauma site and the rest of the bones. The edges of the trauma will be sharp and have jagged edges, and there will also be radiation fracture lines coming from the trauma site. Postmortem trauma is trauma that has occurred to the skeleton after the individual has died. So this possibly could be from when the skeletal remains have been excavated. There will obviously be no signs of healing as this individual is not alive. There is rarely any fracture lines coming from the trauma site. However, there are normally colour differences between the trauma site itself and the surrounding bones. Trauma sites normally consist of fractures in bones, and these could either be from direct trauma or indirect trauma. So direct trauma is when the break is at the point of impact, whereas indirect trauma is where the break occurs at a point that is not the point of impact.
That helps.
So firstly, we have blunt force trauma, and this is caused by a force with a wide impact on the bone, and this usually leaves some kind of indentation in the bone afterwards also. Some weapons that leave blunt force trauma marks leave recognisable patterns, such as a hammer for example. This usually leaves a more of a circular pattern. We also have sharp force trauma, and this is caused by a pointy, sharp-edged implement that has made impacts on the bone. And finally, we have projectile trauma, and this is caused by a projectile that impacts the bone with enough force to go through the surface. This is usually from a gun, however it can also be things such as arrows and spears, and essentially any object that's flying through the air with enough force that when it impacts you, it goes through your bones. So we have many different types of trauma that can happen to our body when we're alive and around the time that we are dying and even after death. And it's really important to be able to identify what kind of trauma this is and essentially when this trauma happens, as this is a unique identifying characteristic to you and can be used to help identify who you are. So thank you for joining me today for our little discussion about trauma. Hopefully you've learned something new. Bye!
Okay, whoops. If I could get my screen back, that would be nice. Thank you. Okay. All right. So again, if you are done with your project, go ahead and read this page over. Just let a whole bunch of folks in. Okay, good morning, good morning, good morning, good morning. All right, those of you who just came.
Oh, ladies and gentlemen, I do keep apologising, but I am neither a
Yeah.
medic nor a historian. I have a face for radio.
Okay, had to get her to stop talking. Okay, so finish this, read this over if you're done. Go through the slideshows. Again, this is what she talked about during the video. Know what the vocabulary is for this. In preparation for next week's test, you need to also look at the wrap-up review. Vocabulary, vocabulary, vocabulary. For this unit, you, oh, we didn't talk about the body farm. We'll talk about this body farm next week. There is one right here close to us in Tennessee. So next class, we'll talk about what the body farm is. So take a look at some of this, but I do want to do that before we review. So we are going to review next week. So the things that you're doing in the project, people have finished Mystery of the Bones out of 30 some people in this class. All right, so make sure that the things that you are searching for in this are the topics that you need to be able to recognize as far as test question is concerned. So this activity is wonderful. This is a lab class, so counts as a lab activity. If you were out in the field, you couldn't actually dig up a skeleton. This is as close to that kind of activity as we can get. All right, so you're going to put your skeleton together, you're going to measure, and unless somebody asks, you can actually, mine right now I'm looking at the static one, but you can actually slide the ruler back and forth. You can move the protractor over to the pelvis and get the angle that you're looking for so that you can tell whether it's male or female. So on the line, you do need to say, don't forget these lines. It asks you, is it a male or female? This one is asking you to, based on the information, is it Caucasian, Mongoloid, or Negroid? You need to say that on the line based on the description. You need to measure the femur, and then you need to use the calculation and calculate how tall the person is. And then when you're finished with all of that, you need to come down to this chart and put all that information that you've collected for each skeleton on the chart. And based on the information that you have in the missing persons column, you compare it to the information they have on the missing people and decide which skeleton belongs to which person. Okay. And then you need finished with the analyst questions and that. Okay. All right. So based on the information they're giving you, you need to decide, put a number, and you can, or a letter here. They have letters on each of these skulls, so you want to make sure you put a letter next to each person to identify their skull. All right, so make sure all of that is complete before you turn it in. All right, and then if there are any questions, if you got stuck on anything, please let me know. All right. Let me see. And that's it. A couple of you still have to turn in who killed Barry. And also there's a reminder here that I'm available for extra help today from 1:30 to 2 o'clock. And that's every Tuesday and Friday. You just need to let me know. Okay. Any questions? Any questions? Any questions? All right. So if you're already finished with all your activity, you're looking at trauma. And reviewing vocabulary, vocabulary, vocabulary. Always important to look at vocabulary. Repeat. So those of you who came in late, you missed the video on trauma. All right, come back up here. All right, so these are the vocabulary, and as you can, as far as all of the bones of the body, you need to know the major ones that you're going to be using to determine, to identify the body if it's a skeletal remains. So we're not asking you to name all the bones in the body, but just the ones that are necessary. And then go back and look at, again, all of these vocabulary words. And that being said, I think, when do I see you next Tuesday? On Tuesday, I'm going to have a short discussion. I think I mentioned this to you before, and I want you to be thinking about it, that, and I don't mean to be morbid. I'm not trying to kill anybody else. If someone found your skeletal remains, how would they know? The question is going to be, how would they know your age, your ethnicity, and any trauma that might have occurred to you that would distinguish you from another skeleton? Okay. We're not going to try to identify who killed you or what killed you. Just if they found your skeletal remains, how would they know it's you? Dental records? Was there something strange with your teeth? Did you break a bone at some point that would have healed, like they mentioned in the videos? How would they, what are some identifying things that they would be able to find about you? So think about that. I'm going to put that as a discussion. So when you log in on Tuesday, that's what you will see first, and then we'll go through the review after that. All righty. I'm going to stop talking. Thank you, Jordan, for sharing. And that's something that you need to think about. One of your classmates just shared that the shape of the forehead that would identify you. The length of the bones would tell how tall or short you are. Also, we need age. How would they estimate your age? Okay, remember that. So you need to be able to tell me because the bone was such and such a length, they can tell that I am. How do they know they have a child? They've discovered a child and not a full-grown adult. That kind of thing. So as you're doing this activity, pay attention to how you made those decisions and then think about if this was you, how would they know it was you? Okay. So like I said, that's something in the background to think about, but finish this activity and anything else you need to finish up because it is Friday. Uh, I do have to start calling home if you're not doing what you're supposed to do. So please get caught up. Jeez. All right, please remember that you have been afforded class time to get this completed. Please be using your time wisely. Always take that in mind. Keep that in mind when things are late. right, quite a few of you are going to keep me busy making phone calls because you've got quite a bit of work missing. And folks, it's not that you don't get good grades when you do the work, it's the work you don't do. All the zeros. So please take care of all these zeros. Like I said, in 2 weeks, end of course is coming up. Report cards will go out. This will be the first quarter grade you're going to get. You don't want it to be a failing grade. So please go in and fix what you need to fix. Again, a late grade is better than no grade. All right, folks, if you have no questions for me, I will see you next Tuesday. You have a great weekend.